Hello and welcome to another episode of the Inspiring Workplaces Summer Series in partnership with H&H. And thank you for bearing with us just a couple of minutes. So we had a few tech issues, but then I feel like after 2 years of working from home, we're well versed in those. So we're just going to style it out. I'm Kelly and I'm a consultant at H&H, and I'm very happy to be here today to introduce our next brilliant speaker. We're in the third and the final week of the summer series. And we've heard from lots of brilliant speakers so far, but plenty more to come this week. And of course, if you missed any of the content and you want to go back, everything's available on demand on the Inspiring Workplaces website. Just a couple of reminders, although if you've been here so far, I'm sure you're very aware. But we are a community and we absolutely would love to hear from you. So if you've got any comments, any questions throughout, please pop them in the chat. And we can answer questions at the end and kind of see what's coming through. And there's no need to worry about muting yourselves or anything like that. It's only me that might make a digital faux pas and ruin the muting. We can't see you when you're automatically muted, so it's all good on that front. So today's speaker then, I actually feel like it's almost fate that I'm here hosting this speaker, because I attended the Inspiring Workplaces Summit in London. And H&H, we're Yorkshire based, and of course we're British, so there's always train problems. And by the time I'd got to the Oval, I'd actually missed the speaker who we're going to hear from today. And I got chatting to a few people on the break, and everyone was saying how brilliant it was and how they absolutely needed to take the insights back to their colleagues. So today I finally get to hear from this speaker, and of course it's not all about me. You get to as well, everybody that's joining them live from around the world, and of course everybody who is catching up on demand. So welcome. So who is our speaker then? It is of course the very talented Gifty Enright. Gifty is an international speaker, coach and expert on women's well-being in the workplace. Gifty's research for her book Octopus on a Treadmill took her around the world exploring the well-being of women at work, alongside her personal experiences of the topic. And her book is very much a roadmap for being your best self at work. How can you juggle the many things in life, being a woman, particularly women with children, and to really maintain that all-important work-life balance. So today, Gifty is going to be talking to us about the 6 gender bias traps and how to avoid them in the workplace, opening our eyes to what the gender biases are, the conscious and unconscious behaviors that could make people fall into those traps, what you can do to avoid falling into them, and of course, how you can stop others from falling into them too. So let's welcome Gifty to the screen.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And thanks for the lovely introduction. And I'm sorry you missed my talk in London. So here goes. Today I'm talking about the gender bias traps that we face in the workplace. But it really is just, in life, but we don't realize that we face them everywhere. But I suppose they're coming to sharper focus in the workplace. So the World Economic Forum has just recently reissued its gender report, the gender parity report. And this report for 2022, normally they look at it using 4 different criteria. So they look at it for economic engagement of women. They also look at health and survival. They look at educational attainment and political empowerment. And they do this across some 148 countries, and they rank and rate them. And currently their forecast for how long it's going to take for the global economy to hit gender parity is 132 years. Now, I think before COVID, it was hovering at about 99 years, and we were all thinking, oh my God, it's going to take us another 100 years. And now it's gone back. And so now it's 132 years. Obviously, COVID didn't help. But can we really wait for 130 years to hit parity for women? Of course we can't, because it's too expensive to do that. It costs the economy too much. It's just not a good way to do business. It's not a good way to live. It's just not the smart way to do things. Now, What do we have to do to help nudge this along so we don't wait for 132 years? And why do we even have to do this? So we need to do it simply because women's achievements normally are not celebrated. And normally, if you ask anybody, you know, tell me of a genius, the first name that pops to mind is Einstein. But there have been women geniuses all along the way, and it's actually hard for us to be the first to pop into anybody's mind. And we also need to raise awareness against biases, because a lot of people don't even know when they're being biased. And this is where the education comes in. And then when they know, when they're awareness, when they're educated and they know that whatever action is biased, they don't know what to do. So hopefully I'll give you some tips as well in this, so that we will be able to proactively challenge gender bias when we see it anywhere. So what are these gender bias traps? There's 6. So the first one is performance bias, and I will actually deep dive into all of these. So now I'm just going to just rattle them off. So we have performance bias, we have attribution bias, we have likability bias, affinity bias, maternal bias, which is the only one that seems self-explanatory, and intersectionality. So I'm going to go into all 6 of them. So let's look at this picture here. What you have is Mozart. So everybody's heard about Mozart, and you know all the music and what a musical genius he was. I'm not sure how many people actually heard of his sister, Maria Anna Mozart, and she was just as talented as Wolfgang Mozart himself, and she played the harpsichord. And when she was 18 years old, her father decided the best use of her talents was for her to go off and have children. So she got married off, and that was the last anybody heard of Maria Anna Mozart. Now, imagine if she had been allowed to be a mother and also be a musician. The world could have benefited from having 2 equally talented Mozarts. So what she suffered from was what is called the performance bias. So this is where men's performance is overestimated and women's performance underestimated. Now, how does this play out? In one study, replacing a woman's name on a CV with a man's name increased the odds of getting hired by 60%. Now, this results in missed opportunities and lower performance ratings for women, simply because the assumption is that a man is going to do better and a woman's talents perhaps lay elsewhere. So how can we challenge this? So in scenarios, for example, if you're in a meeting and the discussion gets heated and the woman is labeled as emotional, you know, I mean, like men don't get emotional. They are just as emotional as women. But because of performance bias, if there's a slight wobble in a woman's voice, she gets labeled as emotional. So then from that point on, whatever she says can't possibly have any bearing on anything. If you're witnessing something like this in a meeting and you become aware of this bias, what can you do? The challenge is, say something like, I think Tracy has a valid point of view, and I think we should keep the discussion going. This buys space for whoever the woman is has got emotional, and it allows her to finish her point. Now, the next bias that we run into is attribution bias. So this is where women get credited less for their accomplishments, but they get blamed more for mistakes, and their contribution is also less valued. Now, how does this play out? In one study, men were interrupted nearly 3 times as often as other men were interrupted, and women fell into the same pattern. And then for me, this is the tragedy, the fact that women are interrupting other women just as much. So when we're talking about these biases, it's not because we're labeling men as bad. No, women are just as biased against other women. This is a societal issue. So when women are being interrupted 3 times, so they don't get to the end of their sentences, why are they being interrupted? Because the assumption is that they can't possibly know what they're talking about, or what they're talking about can't be that important. Whereas if a man is making the same point, he is allowed to finish. Now, also, women are prone to self-doubt and underestimate their own performance. So one example of this is when men and women are applying for a job, a man will throw his hat in the ring when he's met 60% of the skills that are being asked for. But women normally tend to want to wait to match everything being asked for before they throw their hat in the ring. Why? Because they know, blamed more for mistakes and their contribution is valued less. So they want to make sure it's 100% match before they expose themselves to whatever opportunity is out there. And so how does this play up in every day in the work setting? So let's say a female colleague says something in a meeting and it's ignored, but a male colleague picks up the same point and everyone jumps on the idea. Has this happened to anybody? Has anybody ever witnessed this? Anyway, if you were to see that happen, what can you do to challenge this? Is remind everyone that the idea originated from the female colleague. This way, we get visibility, and also their contribution is sort of put up there in the lights. So the next one I want to talk about is likability bias. Now, this is an interesting one, actually. So men are seen as natural leaders when they are assertive, not so much for women. When women are assertive, they're liked less because basically women are expected to be more sort of build community and be collaborative in the way they operate. So they have this double bind of walking a tight rope, because if you're not assertive, you're seen as not being able to lead or don't have what it takes, not being strong enough. But if you are assertive, you rub a lot of people the wrong way and you're called all sorts of names starting with B, and it's not good. So it is a very tight rope for women to walk when it comes to this likability thing. So if you want to be liked, it's like keep your head down and literally smile at everybody and don't put anybody's nose out of joint type thing. Anyway, so I'm sure some of you would be familiar with the cliche of angry Black woman. And why? Because somebody is being assertive. And I mean, Hillary Clinton, God bless her soul, she, when she was running with Barack Obama, at one point, she wasn't likable. That was the thing. People couldn't warm up to her. Now, you never hear people not being able to warm up to a man. It's always a woman, because we are expected to play the warm, fluffy caretaker role. So in a scenario, common workplace scenario, somebody confides in you that they don't like working for women bosses. And I mean, this is so common, it's not even funny. So what can you say to something like that? And this, for me, this is a perennial question. If you see any bias in any form, if you can't quite remember what to say, this is what makes you say that. This is a very smart way to challenge somebody without being aggressive. It just gets them thinking and challenging their own assumptions, because a lot of the time people don't even know they're being biased, and it's only when they're asked a question like this that they're forced to think. So the next one is affinity bias. Interestingly, yesterday I ordered a dress and it was bright yellow, this type of bright yellow. But there you go. Just that blazer alone, her wearing that, into an interview could cost her a job, depending on what job she's going for. Wearing her hair like that could cost her a job, again, depending on what he's going for. Even her earrings could cost her a job. Now, so what we're looking at here is affinity bias. Now, what is this? We gravitate towards people like us and avoid or even dislike people that are different from us. So if you're there thinking, I wouldn't wear that color, straight away it creates a distance. Now, in most situations, it doesn't really matter, but when it comes to work and it comes to opportunities, this becomes a problem. So in a study, when a major orchestra used double-blind auditions like we have in The Voice, so they could hear the musicians but not see them, the odds of women making it past the first round improved by 50%. So this is it. By not seeing people, it just strips out. There's a huge, literally half, it went up just by 50%. So mentors want people who remind them of themselves. So if you wouldn't wear a bright orange jacket and somebody comes wearing a bright orange jacket, you might think they're not my cup of tea. I'm not going to mentor them. Now, when it's a mentoring relationship, or the people in power, should we say hiring managers who are more likely to interview people like themselves, then it means that the opportunities go to the same people. And let's face it, most of the power players are still men. And so how can we challenge this? So when somebody remarks about a woman dressing unprofessionally, and I don't remember the last time anybody said a man was dressed unprofessionally, it's always a woman's sartorial choices that are questioned. The challenge there is, bring the conversation back to her skills and her suitability. So if after an interview somebody says, I'm not sure about her dress sense, take it back to, but she was a competent whatever, she had a degree, she had a PhD. So bring it back to the skills and take it off the wardrobe choice. The next one is maternal. So this one obviously is self-explanatory, but there is this false assumption that mothers are less committed to their careers or less competent. It's like the moment, I'm sure people have heard of pregnancy brain. It's like the moment you get pregnant, you can't think straight or whatever it is. And so when you come back from maternity leave, then what managers tend to do, and most of the time they mean well, is not to overwhelm the woman. Right. And so when hiring managers know that a woman has children, she is 79% less likely to be hired. And if she is, she will be offered less pay. Would you believe? This is what the research is saying. And also mothers are given fewer opportunities and they are held to a higher standard. So here we go with the double bind again. So in a scenario where somebody is asking, do you think it is a good idea to burden her with such a big project straight off maternity leave? The challenge should be she still has the same skill set, and she does. So she has the same skill set she did before she went on maternity leave. So how can we best support her? So in that way, that is how you also get to keep, your talent pipeline, and you keep the skills in-house if you're supporting these women that have come back of maternity leave. And last but not the least is intersectionality. So this is where everything comes together. So you have 2 or 3 biases come together. So maybe you're a woman, maybe you wear an orange jacket, and and maybe you've come back of maternity leave, but where you have different things to discriminate against: gender, race, religion, sexual orientation, you name it. Now, the research shows that people with 3 marginalized identities often feel like they don't belong anywhere. So, e.g., a Black Muslim immigrant woman, for example. So, and the thing is, the compounded impact is actually greater than the sort of a bias you just suffer from, perhaps just for race or just for your gender or just for your sexual orientation. If you put it together, the impact is a lot higher. So in a scenario where somebody says, I'm so impressed by how good her English is, so the assumption is they weren't expecting her English to be good. Why? Maybe because she's wearing a hijab, I'm not sure. But the challenge there, and this is the good old challenge when you don't know what to say, is why do you say that? Again, this forces people to think and challenge their assumptions. And so what I want to draw everybody's attention to in terms of when it comes to gender biases, I've stepped through all 6 of them. If you didn't know any of this, and if you didn't know any of the stats up until now, this can be quite eye-opening when people realize that. But now you know you have the power, and if ever you don't know what to say, but you feel somebody there's a bias sort of being leveled against somebody, the question is, what makes you say that? And if we all did that, it will take less than 132 years before we hit gender parity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gifty. Some really shocking insights there, as you say, from some of those research studies, which, the picture's bad, but sometimes I think seeing it there in black and white is the real, true scale of it. And I think you gave us some brilliant tips there for practical challenges that we can do, and that we can very easily do to support our peers in the workplace. You don't have to be a leader to stand up and support somebody else. It very much is something that we can all get involved in. I don't know about you, but I've been having conversations recently where people will say things like, no, I absolutely support women. We should be equal, and those kind of things, and fully believe that. But then sometimes it really is those unconscious behaviors that people are absolutely not aware of, and there is no intent for that. How would you say people can best sort of educate themselves around that to really gain that kind of self-awareness and awareness, I guess, of the environment that they're in?
Yeah, so and this is where lived experience comes in, because what happens is you can't expect a man to fully identify with the challenges that a woman faces. And even with a woman, unless you've gone off and had a child, the whole world of being a mother is completely alien to a woman who's never had a baby. So it is not about people being bad. It is about you haven't got the lived experience, so you don't know. And so when somebody's saying to you, somebody who perhaps has got a lived experience is flagging something to you, for you to be open to that experience rather than your assumptions and your prejudices coming to the fore, saying maybe somebody's being soft in the head, or these days, you can't move for political correctness, or whatever it is. Be open to the experience and understand that it is not your lived experience. So it gives you lots of blind spots, and allow the other person to educate you. Because once you're curious about it, people are more than happy to explain to you in a non-threatening way.
I love that. I think curiosity sums it up brilliantly. I mean, I guess in all things in life, to keep being curious and to ask that why, as you said. I guess, as I say, we talked about some of those things are really practical challenges that we can do ourselves. And I think proactively challenging is critical. But sometimes that can be quite difficult. I mean, I guess particularly in an environment where you might not feel psychologically safe to do that and to challenge in that way. Is there anything you'd say for leaders maybe, where if there's any crucial things they can do to kind of help create that safer environment for people?
Yes, so for leaders, they have to make sure that the environment is non-threatening, and that's easier said than done. Because sometimes, we're all there, you're all there chatting, and somebody senior walks into the room and the atmosphere changes, and then people are now watching their P's and Q's and what they say. But leaders have to lead by example, and that is the only way you can provide that non-threatening environment. And so if they know that you are the type of leader that is open to being challenged, and you actually open the door for people to come in, and they also know that you're curious and you genuinely want to know, that makes it easy for people. So a lot of leaders, what they do is the corporate email will come and say, this is what we do now. So they come in there, they don't believe it, but they've been instructed to do it because now this is the right thing to do. So they come and pay lip service. And when you do that, people see through it. It just doesn't wash. There's no authenticity in it. And so for you as the leader, you have to lead by example. And you have to challenge when you see somebody being biased, and then your people, your staff need to see you do that. And that gives them the permission, to be able to be open and do that as well.
Thank you, Gifty. And thank you so much for taking the time today to share those insights with us. I finally heard the talk after London, and I'm very, very glad that I have some brilliant insights there to take away. So thank you, and thank you on behalf of everyone else joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. I still believe it was better in person.
Thank you. Okay, so we've still got a couple more talks coming up this week. We'll be hearing from some of the winners of the Inspiring Workplaces Awards, sharing the case studies and the secrets to their success. So don't forget to tune in this week. And of course, Gifty's talk and everything that we've heard so far will all be available on demand. So if you ever need that spark just to keep going, learn about a new topic, step away from the day-to-day, I fully encourage you to just have an explore and see what you'd like to listen to. Enjoy the rest of your day, no matter where you are, and thank you for joining us.